Ever leave a conversation feeling heavier than when you entered it? What if the person calling themselves your friend is actually the source of your exhaustion? Let's talk about the quiet damage that bad friendships can do, and how to spot it before it costs you more than you realize. You deserve friendships that feel steady, like a firm handshake or that perfect cup of coffee on a quiet morning. The kind that grounds you, restores you, and leaves you better than it found you. Simple. Solid. Honest. But here's a truth that too many people ignore: not everyone who claims to be a friend actually acts like one. Some people don't show up to support you, they show up to drain you. They pull you into their chaos, chip away at your peace, and do it so gradually that you barely notice, until one day, you wake up exhausted and wonder why you're so worn down. In this video, we're going to walk through 8 unmistakable signs of a bad friend. These aren't small quirks or harmless habits. These are patterns that, if left unchecked, will cost you your energy, your focus, and even your self-respect. And if you're a man who values peace, dignity, and inner strength, these are the warning signs you cannot afford to ignore. This isn't about judging others, it's about staying aware. It's about protecting the life you've worked hard to build. We'll bring in some wisdom from the Stoics, and I'll share a few tough lessons I've learned firsthand. So go ahead, grab your coffee. Let's have a real conversation about the people we let into our inner circle, because your time and your peace are too valuable to hand out carelessly. Let's start with the first and often most overlooked sign. 1. They drain your energy instead of fueling it. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like something was taken from you? Not your time. Not your money. Something deeper: your clarity, your spark, your sense of calm. You sat down feeling fine, maybe even good. But by the time you got up, it felt like a silent weight had settled on your shoulders. It doesn't hit all at once. At first, you think you're just tired, maybe stressed from the day. But when you step back and look at the pattern, something becomes clear: it's not your day that's draining you. It's them. Bad friends don't always come with obvious red flags. They don't storm in with drama and rage. No, they come with stories, with crises, with endless needs disguised as vulnerability. And at first, you think you're doing the right thing. Being the dependable one. Being a good man. But over time, you realize it's not mutual. You're always the one giving, your time, your energy, your attention. And what do you get back? Nothing but repetition. The same problems. The same behaviors. No progress. No growth. Just a one-way exchange where you're the one left carrying the emotional weight, again and again. And that is just the beginning. Coming up next, we'll talk about the second sign. And it's one that sneaks in under the radar if you're not careful. Let's get into it. You remember what we said: some friends don't refuel you, they drain you. Quietly. Consistently. Until you forget what peace felt like. Let me tell you about one of mine. I had a friend like that once. Let's call him Mike. We'd known each other for years, back to the early days, when we thought loyalty meant never letting go. Mike was always caught in some crisis. His business was on the verge of collapse. His marriage was in constant turmoil. One month it was a health scare, the next it was legal trouble. Every conversation felt like a new emergency. And somehow, I was always the one called in to fix it. And believe me, I tried. I gave him advice. I listened. I showed up when no one else did. But after years of this, something finally clicked. Mike didn't want solutions. He wanted a witness. He wasn't looking to rise above the chaos, he wanted company in it. He wanted someone to sit in the wreckage with him, not to clean it up. I'd offer strategies, steps forward, even tough love, and he'd nod along, thank me, and then show up the next week with the exact same story, just messier. This wasn't about life being hard, life is hard for all of us. This was about choosing to stay stuck. And expecting me to sit there with him like that was my job. The Stoics warned us about people like this. Seneca once said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach. He also cautioned us to guard our peace, because real peace is sacred. Now, I know that might sound cold. You might be thinking, but isn't that what friends do? Stick around when things get rough? Yes, but with one important distinction. There's a difference between support and self-sacrifice. Support means standing beside someone while they make an effort to climb out. Sacrifice is letting them pull you in when they have no intention of changing. And that's not compassion, that's surrender. The truth is, we don't have unlimited reserves. Your time, your attention, your energy, they're finite. And the men who walked this path before us, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they understood this deeply. They taught that your inner life is yours to protect. When you give it away without discernment to someone who only takes, you're not being loyal. You're being careless. And slowly, bit by bit, you lose yourself. So what's the answer? You set the boundary. You offer help, but you don't carry the burden. You give your insight once, maybe twice. If they don't take it, you let them walk their own path. You stop letting their storm become your storm. And instead, you turn your focus inward. You nurture your own character. You rebuild your own peace. Because at the end of the day, a real friend doesn't leave you empty. They challenge you. They strengthen you. They fill your cup even as you fill theirs. So if you're constantly walking away drained, if you're surrounded by men who only take, it's time to ask yourself something tough. Am I walking with people who lift me up, or pull me down? Because that choice, more than almost anything else, will shape your future. Last time, we talked about the friend who keeps you stuck in their storm, expecting you to carry what they refuse to let go of. But not all toxic friendships drain you emotionally. Some operate more like a business transaction. 2. They keep score like it's a game. You ever have a friendship that suddenly starts to feel like you're racking up a debt you never agreed to? Every small favor, every helpful gesture, they don't just offer it freely. They log it. Somewhere in the back of their mind, it's all being tallied up, like invisible points in a game you never knew you were playing. And one day, often when you least expect it, they cash in. Remember when I helped you move? That time I paid for dinner, you still owe me. They don't always say it outright. Sometimes, it's just a pointed look. A guilt trip buried in a casual comment. But the message is clear: I did this for you, now what are you going to do for me? I had a friend like that once, Tom. We'd been close for years, helped each other countless times, no scoreboard involved, or so I thought. But over time, I noticed a shift. If I said I was too busy to hang out or couldn't run an errand for him, his tone would change. He'd remind me of things he'd done, not last week, not last month, years ago. Things I thought were done out of friendship, not as a loan. That's when it hit me: Tom didn't see friendship the same way I did. To him, it was transactional. He gave, but always with the expectation that it would return, with interest. And that's not kindness. That's control. When a friend keeps score, what they're really doing is trying to hold power over you. The scales are never balanced. They're rigged to favor them. And eventually, it wears you down. You stop acting out of genuine care. You start doing things just to avoid guilt, just to escape feeling like you're somehow in their debt. But the Stoics had wisdom for this too. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that we should do good for others as naturally as a vine produces grapes. Not for praise. Not for repayment. Simply because it's who we are. That's what real generosity looks like. So what do you do with a friend who keeps score? You step back. You look at the relationship clearly. Real friendship doesn't come with a receipt. It doesn't leave you feeling guilty, or obligated, or emotionally indebted. True friendship is freely given and freely received. And when you find yourself caught in a dynamic that feels more like a contract than a connection, you've got a choice: keep playing their game, or walk away and reclaim your peace. 3. They disrespect your boundaries. Boundaries are some of the clearest signs of self-respect. They're the lines we draw to protect our time, our energy, and our inner calm. But a bad friend? They'll test those lines. Not by mistake, by design. They hear your no, but they keep pushing. They see the line you drew, and step over it, just to see what you'll do next. So what happens when you let them cross the line, and say nothing? They push a little further next time. And a little further after that. Before long, it becomes a cycle, one that chips away at your peace, your energy, and eventually, your connection to who you are. You're left feeling disrespected, depleted, and wondering how you even got here. In Stoic philosophy, boundaries aren't just nice to have, they're non-negotiable. They're essential to living with clarity, dignity, and inner calm. Marcus Aurelius put it simply: the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Meaning, what you allow into your life, especially through the people you surround yourself with, eventually stains your character. So when you let others constantly interrupt your peace or cross lines you've drawn, you're not just tolerating discomfort. You're inviting chaos. You're sending a message to the world, and to yourself, that your values are flexible. That your self-respect is for sale. And trust me, bad friends notice that. They test your resolve. They watch how far they can go before you push back. And if you don't, they learn something dangerous: your boundaries are negotiable. That opens the door for control, not connection. Because this isn't just about disrespect, it's about power. When someone consistently ignores your limits, what they're really saying is, my needs matter more than your principles. And if that goes unchallenged long enough, you start to believe it. You start to second-guess yourself. You feel the resentment rise, but you suppress it. You get angry, but stay silent. Because confrontation feels awkward, and you don't want to make things worse. But here's what the Stoics would say: discomfort is never a reason to abandon what is right. You have a duty, not just to others, but to yourself, to protect your peace. That means holding the line, even when it's hard. A real friend may not always agree with your boundaries, but they'll respect them. They'll understand those lines are there for a reason: to protect your energy, your well-being, your time. A bad friend, though, they bulldoze right through. Again. And again. Until you're left with nothing but regret and a trail of lost self-respect. The solution? Simple, but not always easy. You enforce your boundaries. Calmly. Clearly. Without apology. Not out of anger. Not to punish. But because your peace matters. Your life matters. Your values matter. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." So, master yourself. Draw your lines and stand by them. The right people will honor them. The wrong ones won't. And in that moment, you'll have your answer. For, they only show up when they need something. There's a certain kind of friend who disappears when life is good, and reappears the moment they need something. You know the pattern. No messages. No calls. Not even a passing check-in for months, maybe even years. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, a cheerful message pops up. A little, "Hey, how've you been?" Maybe a sprinkle of nostalgia. A mention of the old days. And just like that, the real reason they're back becomes clear. They want something. A favor. A loan. A connection. A quick solution to a mess they created. Whatever it is, the tone of the conversation shifts. One minute it feels like a friendly check-in. The next, you're suddenly a transaction. The Stoics warned us about people like this. They didn't have to deal with unread messages or sudden texts from people who vanished for months, but they knew human nature. And it hasn't changed much. Seneca once spoke about the difference between genuine friendship and mere utility. A true friend walks with you through all seasons, not just during the harvest. But there are those who only show up when it's convenient. To them, relationships aren't sacred, they're strategic. They don't see you as a companion, they see you as a resource. Something to dip into when they're thirsty, and leave behind when they're satisfied. And the damage? It's not always loud. It's subtle. You're left feeling used. Hollowed out. Like your worth only exists when you're useful. And if you're not careful, that feeling can settle in. You start to question your own value outside of what you can do for others. That's a dangerous place for any man to be, especially one who's worked to build a life rooted in integrity, peace, and self-respect. From a psychological standpoint, this type of behavior is rooted in entitlement. These people don't see your time or your energy. They don't see your boundaries. All they see is an opportunity to solve their problem. And in that moment, you are the most convenient solution. But that's not friendship. That's exploitation, dressed up in a familiar smile. The Stoics offered a powerful remedy to this kind of manipulation: clarity. Be clear with yourself, about who you are, what you stand for, and what you will no longer tolerate. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Our life is what our thoughts make it." If you allow someone to treat you like a convenience store, open when they need you, forgotten when they don't, you're agreeing to play that role. But the good news? You don't have to. So when someone reappears out of nowhere, after months or years of silence, pause. Don't rush to say yes. Ask yourself, when did they show up for me? When did they invest in this friendship, not just benefit from it? Because while true friendship isn't about keeping score, it is about mutual respect. And real friends don't disappear when life is easy, only to return when they're desperate. A true friend shows up, not just in your hardest moments, but also in your quiet victories. They're present through thick and thin, without conditions or hidden motives. A man living by Stoic principles knows the difference. He gives freely, but never foolishly. He helps where he can, but not at the cost of his own dignity. And when someone shows up just to take, he's not angry. He's aware. He understands that peace of mind isn't something to be traded away for convenience. Not his, and not yours. 5. They criticize more than they celebrate. There's a certain kind of friend who seems to take pride in pointing out every flaw, every missed step, every moment you could have done better. They call it honesty. They say they're just keeping it real. They'll insist it's because they care about you. But over time, their words stop sounding like guidance, and start feeling like paper cuts. Small, sharp, and constant. Instead of leaving your conversations feeling uplifted or wiser, you walk away feeling smaller. Doubtful. Diminished. I remember once sharing a personal project with a friend, something I had poured months into. Early mornings. Late nights. The kind of work that stretches you, forces you to grow. When I finally finished it, I told him, expecting a simple, "well done." Maybe a handshake. Maybe a smile. But what I got? A list of everything that could go wrong. Not advice. Not encouragement. Just a cold reminder of what might fail next. He disguised it as concern. But I knew. It wasn't about helping, it was about control. A quiet way of cutting down the pride I had in what I built. And the worst part? At first, I brushed it off. Told myself that's just how he is. But deep down, it chipped away. Slowly. Quietly. This is how toxic friends erode you, not with insults, but with persistent doubt masked as care. And if you're not careful, you begin to absorb it. You start second-guessing yourself even when you're doing well. You stop sharing your wins. Why bother, when they're always met with cold judgment? And little by little, that confidence you fought to build begins to shrink. But the Stoics taught us a better way. Epictetus reminded us, focus only on what's within your control. Your own thoughts. Your own actions. Your own values. Not the fleeting opinions of others. A Stoic man doesn't chase approval. But he also doesn't tolerate relationships that chip away at his sense of self. Because real friendship isn't about competition, it's about growth. Mutual growth. It's about sharpening one another, not cutting each other down. From a psychological lens, constant criticism often comes from personal insecurity. That friend? They might not even realize their words are more about them than about you. But here's the truth, that's not your burden to carry. Your responsibility is simple, to recognize when someone is more invested in dimming your light than helping you shine. A good friend celebrates your victories. They'll give honest feedback, yes, but it comes from a place of respect. From a place of wanting to see you grow. If someone is always quick to spot the flaw but slow to offer real support, it's worth asking yourself a hard question: why am I keeping this person so close? Because your peace, and your growth, depend on the company you keep. 6. They gossip about everyone. There's something quietly unsettling about the person who can't help but share other people's business. You know the type. They lean in just a little, drop their voice to a whisper, and suddenly, you're in on something. At first, it feels like trust. Like you're being let in on a secret. But if you hang around long enough, a pattern starts to emerge. Every time you see them, there's a new story. A new scandal. A new misstep that someone else made. Who failed at what? Who's getting divorced? Who's in trouble behind the scenes? And at some point, you realize something simple, but deeply important. If they're talking this freely about others to you, what are they saying about you when you're not around? I learned that lesson the hard way. Sitting across from a man I thought I knew well, sharing coffee like we'd done a dozen times before. But this time was different. He spent nearly an hour dissecting the lives of people we both knew, who was struggling, who was drowning in debt, who was faking a happy life while falling apart inside. He wasn't just sharing stories. He was revealing betrayals. Trusts that had been broken. Vulnerabilities weaponized for small talk. At first, I nodded along. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. But halfway through, it hit me: if he can speak this way about them, what makes me any different? The Stoics had no patience for this kind of behavior. Epictetus warned us to stay clear of idle talk. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that a virtuous life is rooted in truth and simplicity. Gossip? It's the opposite of both. It thrives on distortion. It feeds the worst parts of us. The part that feels taller by making others smaller. And a Stoic life? That life demands discipline. Restraint. It asks us to master not just what we do, but what we say. To avoid wasting our breath on words that chip away at character, either ours or someone else's. From a psychological standpoint, gossip often stems from insecurity. It's a form of social armor, meant to protect the speaker by putting others in the spotlight. But that protection is false. It doesn't build connection. It builds suspicion. And in the end, it always leaves someone hurt. A person who constantly talks about others is usually doing everything they can to avoid looking at themselves. Gossip becomes their shield, a way to deflect from their own flaws by shining a harsh spotlight on everyone else's. And if you're not careful, they'll pull you into that cycle. At first, you're just listening. Then you're nodding. Maybe adding your own comments. Before you know it, you've become a part of the same destructive pattern, feeding the fire without realizing you're standing in the smoke. But there's a way out. And it's simple, though not always easy. Step away. Change the subject. Refuse to engage. Guard your voice like it carries weight, because it does. And more importantly, take note of who brings these stories to your door. A true friend speaks the same truth whether you're in the room or not. A wise man knows the value of his words and doesn't waste them tearing others down just to feel bigger. In the end, we become the company we keep. If someone thrives on gossip, they will never protect your name. So choose better company, and just as importantly, be better company yourself. That's the Stoic way. 7. They make you feel small. There's a certain kind of person who doesn't just point out your flaws, they chip away at your confidence piece by piece, and they do it quietly. They don't argue with you. They don't attack you directly. Instead, they slip their barbs in with a smile. A joke here. A backhanded compliment there. It might sound harmless at first. But after spending time with them, you start to feel smaller. Less certain. A little more doubtful of yourself than you were before. And that's no accident. A bad friend hides behind humor to deliver their criticism. They point out your flaws in front of others, wrap their judgment in sarcasm, and when you finally say something, they dismiss it, you're too sensitive. But let's be honest, these aren't jokes. They're precision strikes. Subtle attacks designed to make them feel bigger by making you feel small. And over time, if you let it go unchecked, it works. You start to internalize their words. You begin to wonder if maybe, they're right. You adjust your behavior, hoping to avoid another dig. You seek their approval just to feel okay again. That's exactly where they want you. Unsure of yourself and dependent on their validation. But from a Stoic point of view, this is where you must reclaim your power. Epictetus taught us that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. But if you hand over that consent again and again, it becomes a habit. A dangerous one. A man rooted in Stoic principles understands this deeply. His sense of self is not up for negotiation. He does not trade his dignity for someone else's comfort. He does not let sarcasm disguise disrespect. And he certainly doesn't shrink just to make others feel tall. Next, we'll talk about the final sign, and it may be the most painful one of all, the friend who betrays your trust when you need them most. Psychologically, people who make others feel small are often wrestling with something inside themselves. Insecurity. Self-doubt. A deep discomfort with their own reflection. So instead of facing it, they chip away at those around them, hoping to feel bigger by making others feel less. But their inner struggle? That's not your burden to carry. What's within your control is how you respond. You have the power to hold your ground. To speak clearly. To set boundaries and enforce them. You get to decide what kind of energy you allow into your life, and what kind of behavior you will no longer accept. The solution isn't complicated, but it may be uncomfortable. You start by telling the truth. If a relationship leaves you feeling less instead of more, you act. You limit your time with those who drain you. You say what needs to be said when a line is crossed. And if the pattern continues, you walk away. And you do it with your head held high, and your dignity intact. Because a man's worth isn't measured by the opinions of others. It's forged in his choices, how he lives, how he leads, and who he chooses to walk beside. So choose wisely. Your peace depends on it. 8. They don't respect your growth. Here's a hard truth that many men face as they grow older. Not everyone will respect the man you're becoming. Some people cling tightly to who you used to be, because it's more comfortable for them. They remember the version of you that made different choices, chased different priorities, lived with less clarity, less discipline. And even though you've worked hard to evolve, into a man who moves with intention, who's wiser and more grounded, they simply can't accept it. Or worse, they won't. So they keep dragging you back into the past. Not because they miss you. But because your growth makes them uncomfortable. It challenges them to look at their own life, and not everyone is ready for that. A bad friend will constantly remind you of the man you used to be, especially when you're trying to become someone better. You cut out bad habits. You commit to a purpose. You choose discipline. But they don't celebrate the shift. Instead, they mock it. They laugh at the old stories like trophies. They bring up your mistakes at every opportunity. And if you're not careful, if you listen to them long enough, you might start to believe you haven't changed at all. That's the real danger. From a Stoic perspective, this is the trap of external validation. When we measure our progress by the comfort of others, we lose sight of the truth. Marcus Aurelius said it best. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Next, we'll close this journey by reclaiming your right to evolve, and why staying true to your growth, even when others can't accept it, is the highest form of self-respect. Be one. That's the lesson. Your growth isn't up for debate. You don't need anyone's permission to become who you're meant to be. But if you spend your time surrounded by people who refuse to see your progress, you'll waste precious energy explaining, justifying, defending, instead of becoming. And the Stoics understood this truth deeply: time is something we never get back. Psychologically, people who dismiss your evolution are often struggling with their own stagnation. Your growth shines a light on what they've been avoiding in themselves. And not everyone is ready to look. So instead of stepping forward, they try to pull you backward, dragging out old stories, old mistakes, old versions of you. Hoping you'll stay in a place that feels safe for them, even if it's no longer right for you. But here's the solution. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Growth can be a lonely path, but better to walk it alone in truth than to sit comfortably in a crowd built on denial. A real friend respects your journey. They don't mock your evolution. They don't cling to outdated versions of you. They walk beside you, encourage your steps, and honor the man you're becoming. And if someone in your life can't make that shift, it may be time to create distance, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. Because your life is shaped by the company you keep. If you want to stay true to your path, then walk with those who honor your progress, not those who resist it. That's the Stoic way. And if today's message has stirred something in you, if you've recognized any of these signs in someone close, remember this simple Stoic truth. It's not about anger. It's not about blame. It's about clarity. It's about protecting your peace, the kind you've earned through experience, effort, and the courage to grow. You can't control who others are. But you can decide who sits at your table. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a man can do is quietly stand up, look around, and say, "This seat is already filled." You deserve friendships that sharpen you, not dull you. Connections that feel like standing in the morning sun after a long, cold night. So if this message spoke to you, stand for peace. Drop a comment below and write, "I stand for peace." Because that's what we're building here, a life of strength, clarity, and purpose. A life grounded in Stoic wisdom, not ancient robes and rituals, but timeless principles made practical for this world. So protect your time. Guard your energy. Honor your character. And hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join this community of men walking the same path. I'll see you in the next video, where we continue the journey, together.